SpaceX has just unveiled a massive amount of progress updates on its most anticipated project. The Lunar Starship is in active development and SpaceX is backing it up with facts. We do the complete analysis. Rocket Lab, Blue Origin and NASA are cooperating on the next New Glenn launch. And the Space Force's Golden Dome takes shape. Is space in danger? My name is Felix, welcome to What About It? Let's dive right in. Starship updates. Humanity is at an inflection point. For the first time in our existence, we possess the means, technology, and for the moment, the will to establish a permanent human presence beyond Earth. That's the introduction to a new post SpaceX published on its website. A link to it will be in the description of this video if you want to take a look, and today's Starship update segment is mainly about this. Why? It is crucial to understand the past and future of SpaceX's Starship. I'm often confronted with one very important question. If SpaceX is supposed to land on the moon in 2026 or possibly early 27, how come we haven't seen any Lunar Starship hardware yet? What SpaceX is testing at Starbase right now is not meant to fly to the moon. Doesn't it take a long time to develop something like an HLS Starship, especially if it took so long to get to where Starship development is right now? You're right, it does. It takes way longer than a few months, but then how are they supposed to land on the moon in 26? Aren't they way behind? You see, this is where available evidence and reality separate. Public perception is that there's nothing visible at Starbase yet that would point to the Lunar Starship, except for maybe that quick mock-up nose cone next to the Tiki Bar. The Tiki Bar. However, that is not all, and SpaceX has finally provided an update on exactly that. I tried to convey this multiple times on my episodes in the past, but that's hard without any proof. So here we go, to the moon and beyond. How far exactly is SpaceX in designing and constructing the elusive Lunar Starship? To get a good answer, we need to first understand the question. What does it mean to build a Lunar Starship? What's the task? Simply put, it's the biggest aeronautical project in human history. Starships are not just supposed to get us back to the moon as Apollo did in the 60s and 70s. Every single HLS Starship landing on the moon will be its own lunar base. Yeah, a temporary but substantial foothold on the moon. A base station capable of supporting a crew for weeks, maybe even months, without having to build a base. A single Starship boasts a pressurized habitable volume exceeding 600 cubic meters, roughly 2/3 that of the entire International Space Station. Complete with a scalable cabin for hordes of explorers and dual airlocks tailored for surface ops. By comparison, each of Starship's 2 airlocks offers about 13 cubic meters of habitable space, more than twice what the Apollo lander provided. That's big! Cargo versions of the Starship lander can touch down with payloads of up to 100 metric tons directly on the surface, hauling massive payloads such as unpressurized rovers, pressurized rovers, nuclear reactors, and lunar habitats. Taking that into account, SpaceX isn't late at all. Do not confuse the Lunar Starship with any other lander ever built or in construction right now. Now here comes the reason why public perception and reality are diverging. SpaceX's Lunar Starship efforts are divided into 2 parts. I quote SpaceX here. These 2 parts are the development of the core Starship system and supporting infrastructure, including production facilities, test facilities, and launch sites, which SpaceX is self-funding, representing over 90% of system costs. And development of the HLS-specific Starship configuration, which leverages and modifies the core vehicle capability to support NASA's requirements for landing crew on and returning them from the moon. One of these 2 parts you've seen a lot of, and the other you haven't. We talk about Starship development at Starbase, McGregor, and Hawthorne twice a week. What we don't talk about is HLS. And the only reason for this is that there is no info. It's largely being done behind closed doors. Why? Because it's a race, and everything that's shown publicly is instantly being investigated and copied by others. That's the reality, and you can't blame those who copy it. What would you do if you had to win a race? Taking inspiration and copying have always been a fixed part of almost every industry, not just by China. SpaceX does it too, granted less than others. And SpaceX is working under a fixed-price contract with NASA, ensuring that the company is only paid after the successful completion of progress milestones, and American taxpayers are not on the hook for increased SpaceX costs. I've said this before, there is no tax money wasted in this. So there are two paths. So far, SpaceX has cranked out over 36 Starships and 600 Raptor engines, clocking more than 226,000 seconds of burn time on the Raptor 2 and over 40,000 seconds on the cutting-edge Raptor 3. They've launched 11 Starship-only flight tests and 11 full-stack flights with Starship and Super Heavy. There have been ups and downs, and you're familiar with them if you've been following Y for a while. And then there's that second path you don't know much about. Let me change that real quick. Path number 2 is the lander. In secrecy and shrouded from the public, SpaceX's HLS team has completed 49 milestones tied to developing the subsystems so far. Let's take a look at some of them. SpaceX released a massive amount of information. We have full-scale cabin demos, multi-crew habitation testing, oxygen and nitrogen injection, air distribution, sanitation, humidity, thermal control, and cabin acoustics. We have docking adapter qualification, an androgynous SpaceX system, active and passive, linking Starship and Orion, derived from proven Dragon 2 technology. We have landing leg drop prototyping, a full-scale article at Flight Energies on simulated lunar regolith to validate performance and foot regolith interaction. There's Raptor Lunar throttling, a thrust profile demo for a precise moon landing. MMOD, or micrometeorite and orbital debris testing, shielding, insulation and windows stack-ups against impacts and thermal extremes. Landing avionics have been created and tested, software, sensors and radar demos for navigation and pinpoint lunar touchdowns. Are you still with me? We're not done yet. Here's a quick note from today's sponsor before we go on. Space nerds like you and me really hate missing their favorite rocket launching. Today's sponsor, Launch Notifier, has created a service that helps you keep track of Starship launches and engine test fires with ease and comfort. Each time SpaceX is about to perform a test fire or launch, a siren sounds. That is the signal that there are just 10 minutes left before the action starts. This is when Launch Notifier sends you an email or text message. This message not only notifies you of the imminent action, but it also contains links to running live streams covering the event. Sign up is simple, and best of all, you can enjoy this service for free. Just sign up to Tier 1 and receive email notifications. You can always upgrade to a higher tier to add text message services. And new users get 20% off their first months with code Y20. Don't miss any of this sweet Starbase action. Get Launch Notifier today. No downloads, no app, no hassle. Visit launchnotifier.com and stay on top of when Starship launches and testing is taking place. Alright, notified. Let's keep going with what SpaceX has done so far. A comprehensive software architecture review was conducted. Vehicle control processes, compute mapping, and critical functions such as zero fault detection, caution and warning alerts, and telemetry. Raptor cold start testing was done. Pre-chilled sea level and vacuum engines simulating post-coast conditions. An integrated operations plan review has taken place. SpaceX and NASA mission ops, flight rules, crew procedures, and a high-level timeline. A fuel depot power module was built. Prototype power generation and distribution for the tanker variant. Orbital refueling. The depot will require a significant amount of power, primarily for cooling the commodities. A ground RF comms demo was done. A flight equivalent ground station to vehicle link. The elevator/airlock demo was completed. One of the very few things on this list we actually saw images of before. It was conducted using Axiom EVA suits, full crew and cargo transfer ops between Starship and the lunar surface. A medical system demo happened as well, onboard crew medkit and ground telemedicine tests. You want those Artemis astronauts to be prepared for every eventuality. HITL, or hardware-in-the-loop testbed activation on flight hardware sims for the upcoming propellant transfer demo was also already completed. This is another comment I've read in various forms by now. SpaceX will need to develop the fuel depot and the fueling process. They haven't even started that, so orbital fuel transfers in 2026 are unlikely. That is not entirely true, as they have begun developing this long ago. We just haven't seen the hardware in the open yet. That doesn't mean that they're not already working on it. So that's the state of progress, and SpaceX backed it up with many images. Now, the next big question is what's next? And is it possible to meet the set deadlines? The answer to this follow-up question is tied to the two-path approach. They are maturing the Starship. At this point, they know precisely what form factor it will have. So SpaceX is fabricating a flight hardware Starship HLS cabin with functional avionics, power, crew systems, ECLSS or environmental control and life support system, comms and thermal control, while at the same time testing V3 Starships at Starbase and soon in Florida. It runs in parallel. This flight-ready module will demonstrate system maturity for lunar landings, facilitate integrated hardware testing, and provide realistic crew training. The emphasis here is on the term flight article. This first crew cabin could be flown. That's the goal, and SpaceX gave us a loose timeline as well. The next HLS milestones are, for 2026, a long-duration flight and in-space propellant transfer. Both of these milestones depend on how the new V3 Starship performs initially. If it flies smoothly out of the box, it will accelerate this timeline. If it doesn't, it will delay it. On-orbit refueling enables the Artemis architecture, delivering up to 100 tons to the lunar surface for rovers, habitats, and a sustainable moon presence. It kicks off with a Starbase-launched Starship lingering in orbit to collect propulsion and thermal data over an extended mission, including long-term propellant storage and boil-off rates. Very important. A second Starship then launches, rendezvous, and demos ship-to-ship propellant transfer in Earth orbit. So both tests will be combined. And it will happen as soon as a V3 Starship can do it without any significant problems. To be clear, the last two V2 flights could have done it, but they were still old gen. SpaceX needs to do this with the new generation. Here's another very important tidbit of information released by SpaceX. Remember how we speculated on how the orbital refueling process would happen? Here's SpaceX's reveal. Starship V3 vehicles are equipped with docking ports and can be configured to act as tanker vehicles by adding docking probes. We knew that one. However, SpaceX further states that Starship also has a connection point where propellants are loaded onto the vehicle in preparation for launch, which has been updated to enable on-orbit propellant transfer. What this likely means is that the actual in-orbit fuel transfer will happen through the same terminal they use on the ground, the quick disconnect. The tanker will have a quick disconnect to attach to the same interface that the ship uses for fueling on the ground. That's the story broken down. For the scale Starship is trying to achieve, it is not too late. Depending on V3 performance starting likely in January, SpaceX will finish an entire flight article cabin module next year, demonstrate a long-duration mission in Earth orbit, including fuel transfer, and possibly finish the first HLS Starship test article for a trip and landing demonstration on the moon. That is what we're looking forward to. Now, spaceflight development is a bit of a luck game, especially when constructing things that have never been done before. If the V3 design still has a few flaws, or if Raptor 3 won't perform as it should, if the orbital refueling causes trouble and traditional media reports about a fuel catastrophe in low Earth orbit, then it will take longer. That's the price you pay for wanting more. In my opinion, however, this seems well worth the wait. There is nothing comparable to Starship right now, and we should use it to catapult humanity to the next level. Before we move on, hit the subscribe button to stay informed. Like this video if it brought you value and become a wise supporter for extra content. Up to 7 picture galleries per week, satellite, helicopter and ground photos, and 3D animations. Chat with me and gain more insights on the topic you love. Thank you very much. Alright, now let's talk about SpaceX's biggest competitors. How do they tie into all this? The second New Glenn rocket, designated NG-2, performed a successful hot fire on Thursday night. According to an ex-post, the company extended the duration of this test compared to NG-1's static fire. All 7 B-4 engines fired in a beautiful sequence for a total of 38 seconds and without any signs of trouble. The extended test time was explained in an ex-post by Dave Limp. We extended the hot fire duration this time to simulate the landing burn sequence by shutting down the non-gimbaled engines after ramping down to 50% thrust, then shutting down the outboard gimbaled engines while ramping the center engine to 80% thrust. This helps us understand fluid interactions between active and inactive engine feed lines during landing. That sounds very similar to the early SpaceX problems with Super Heavy. After this critical milestone, NG-2 will be integrated with its payload, NASA's Escapade spacecraft built by Rocket Lab. This marks the final preparation before launch. This is a true teamwork mission. Blue Origin, NASA, Rocket Lab, all working in unison. You guys rock. With NG2's launch upcoming, let's have a look at New Glenn, Blue Origin's biggest rocket. They achieved a historic milestone on January 16, 2025, when New Glenn successfully reached orbit on its maiden flight. This was the first time a company achieved orbital insertion on a debut launch attempt in the modern commercial spaceflight era. New Glenn features a 7-meter diameter spanning both stages, making it the widest operational orbital rocket, at least until Starship with its continuous 9-meter diameter reaches orbit for the first time. At 98 meters tall, it towers over 30 stories and dwarfs SpaceX's Falcon family while remaining smaller than Starship. New Glenn's 2-stage configuration features a reusable first stage and an expendable second stage. The first stage, designated GS1, measures 57.5 meters and is powered by 7 BE-4 engines, producing a combined 1,746 tons of thrust at liftoff. BE-4 is about as powerful as a Raptor engine. The significant difference here is that Starship has more than 4 times the number of engines in its first stage. BE-4 is the most powerful oxygen-rich staged combustion engine ever flown using liquefied natural gas and liquid oxygen. It features deep throttle capabilities essential for precision landings. New Glenn's second stage extends 26.8 meters and utilizes 2 BE-3U vacuum-optimized engines, producing over 145 tons of combined thrust. These hydrogen-fueled engines achieve a specific impulse of 445 seconds. They rank among the highest performing operational rocket engines and enable efficient insertion into high-energy orbits. The BE-3U can restart up to 3 times during a mission, providing flexibility for complex orbit maneuvers, satellite constellation deployment, and direct geostationary injection. New Glenn was engineered from inception with reusability as a core design principle, targeting a minimum of 25 flights per first stage booster. Unlike Falcon 9's first stage, New Glenn's first stage is not designed to return to land on shore. It will perform sea-based landings exclusively on a massive autonomous vessel named Jacqueline, after Jeff Bezos' mother. The ship will be positioned approximately 1,000 kilometers downrange in the Atlantic Ocean. The booster's descent is controlled by an aerodynamic control system featuring 4 actuated fins near the top for attitude adjustment. 2 large fixed strakes provide lift and stability during atmospheric re-entry. It features a 6-leg landing system that deploys 14 seconds before touchdown. Regular fins? Why, no grid fins like SpaceX's launchers and many other manufacturers prefer. Unlike Falcon 9's or Starship's grid fins, New Glenn's fixed strakes generate body lift during descent, potentially enabling better cross-range capability. It glides way better than without them, shedding energy and thus protecting the booster and saving fuel. Now that we have a general idea of New Glenn, let's examine what it has accomplished so far and what the near and mid-term future holds for the giant rocket. The maiden flight's booster, whimsically named "So You're Telling Me There's a Chance," successfully separated and initiated its return sequence, which in itself is a massive success for a first launch. Unfortunately, that was where the good fortune ended. NG-1's booster was lost during the final landing phase. At this point, it was traveling at approximately Mach 5.5 and 25.7 kilometers above sea level. This is when engines failed to restart for the landing burn, leading to the booster's demise. Blue Origin's investigation identified the root cause as slosh-induced oxidizer shortfall in the turbopumps and implemented several corrective actions. Again, this sounds very much like SpaceX's early problems with Super Heavy. Now, the company is confident in achieving a successful landing on the upcoming NG-2 mission, slated to launch in just a few days. In fact, Blue Origin is so confident in the Never Tell Me the Odds mission that the booster is already planned to perform a second mission on NG-3. And both missions are quite significant. While NG-2's task is to take NASA's Escapade probes to Mars, NG-3 is planned to take the uncrewed Blue Moon Mk1 lunar lander to the moon early next year. Speaking of next year, Blue Origin plans to begin providing regular launch services with New Glenn as well. If all goes to plan, we can expect up to 2 launches per month in 2026. Just like SpaceX's Falcon 9's primary mission is is to deliver satellites for the Starlink constellation, New Glenn has a steady customer in Amazon's Project Kuiper constellation. 12 confirmed launches have been booked, and there are contractual options for an additional 15 Kuiper launches. And that is likely just the beginning. New Glenn will deploy 61 to 75 Kuiper satellites per launch, supporting Amazon's $10 billion broadband constellation targeting 3,236 satellites. Confirmed clients also include AST Space Mobile, which has contracted multiple launches for its massive Block 2 Bluebird satellites, Telesat with at least 5 launches for its Lightspeed constellation, Eutelsat, OneWeb, SkyPerfect, JSat, and MuSpace. Aside from these commercial clients, Blue has NASA contracts, including the Escapade mission and its contribution to the Artemis program, which involves delivering humans and materials to the lunar surface. The US Space Force also selected New Glenn to launch several national security payloads for a total of $2.4 billion from 2027 to 2032. There will be plenty to do for this launch system. Nonetheless, it is clear that Blue Origin is working on a successor to its largest rocket to date in the background. Meet New Armstrong, a concept for what's to come post New Glenn. All the way back in September 2016, Blue Origin briefly announced New Armstrong. Rob Meyerson, Blue Origin's former president, characterized New Armstrong as designed for that long-term vision of interplanetary transportation, suggesting capabilities that far exceed those of New Glenn. Jeff Bezos described it as the next chapter in the company's multi-generational vision for millions of people living and working in space, designed for Mars missions and deep space exploration. That sounded a lot like Elon's vision at this point. However, no technical details, specifications, or development timeline have been disclosed since the 2016 announcement. Whether New Armstrong represents an evolved New Glenn variant or an entirely new vehicle architecture remains unclear. While it is fair to assume that somewhere in a design office at Blue Origin, clever minds are working on what's to come after New Glenn, it is also safe to assume that the company will not go all in on New Armstrong before it has perfected New Glenn. This is a very advanced modern rocket, and it is only at the very beginning of its duty cycle. You can compare it to how SpaceX learned a great deal from the Falcon 9, which undoubtedly benefits Starship development significantly. Up in orbit, a new defense system is taking shape, the Golden Dome. Maryland-based Quantum Space is preparing to launch its first Ranger 500 spacecraft called Ranger Prime. On this launch, the Ranger 500 spacecraft is supposed to demonstrate critical capabilities. These include advanced avionics and remote proximity targeting operations. The goal is to show the ability to maneuver near to other objects in space with precision. What makes Ranger particularly innovative is its versatility. The company acquired Phase 4's multi-module propulsion technology in September. The thrusters are able to operate as both a chemical thruster for high thrust and an electric thruster for high efficiency. The engineers at Quantum have completed a manufacturing readiness review and are now moving forward with spacecraft assembly and testing. June 2026 is the launch target, and the mission will be launched from Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. Quantum Space originally focused on cislunar operations between Earth and the Moon, but the company has since pivoted toward defense applications, particularly for the Golden Dome Missile Defense Initiative. It raised $40 million in June to fund development, describing Ranger as highly maneuverable and capable of supporting missile tracking sensors or space-based interceptors. But defense isn't the only application. Commercially, Ranger could dock with satellites in geostationary orbit to extend their operational life by 3 to 5 years. The company plans to follow Ranger 500 with its larger Ranger 2000 variant later in 2026, featuring expanded payload capacity and enhanced capabilities. Space-based military assets are a growing sector. Keep calm, everyone. Currently, this is solely for defense operations. That's it for today. Smash the like button, subscribe for more. This is what fuels the algorithm, and this is how you can help us for free. Check out our epic shirts in your favorite Space Nerd store. Our brand new Mechazilla shirt and our Raptor emblem design are both up. Link is in the description and in the card you should see now. And if you want to learn more about how SpaceX's Raptor 3 engine works, watch this video next to continue your journey. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next episode. Without any significant propellants. Moon MK1 slides for the styling contemplation. This video you can